Hi guys, Ray here from City of Hand TV, and I'm joined by our football finance expert, Colin Savage. And you still got a bit of a tan left, Colin, from your trip to Istanbul. So, same as Bernard, lucky guys.
Well, actually, this is probably more from Wales. I spent a week in Wales.
But I get more from the back garden, yeah.
We spent apparently you spent so much time
freezing. I've got my hoodie back on, so it must be cold.
I was going to say you spent so much time in the buses there, getting ferried to the ground. You got no chance for a suntan. But guys, this is the third part, and I think the most up to date part. What's happening now about our little finance series. The first one, if you want to go back and watch them in order, was about the history of FFP, why it came into existence, and how it affected City in the early days. Second part of our video was the UEFA charges from about 2018-ish and the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Or I maybe got that slightly wrong there, but that's the CAS, as it's easy to say, and what happened there. And this third video is about what looks like an absolute bundle of charges, 115 charges, Colin. Surely, if you're throwing that much mud, some of it's got to stick.
Well, yes. I mean, this is about mud sticking. And again, I remember, it was February, February the 6th, I think it was. Was it? Yes, this year. Yeah. I remember because I was in an all-day workshop at work. And, of course, finished at 5 o'clock, looked at my phone, and you can hear your phone going. You think something's going on. And all the news come out about these 115 charges that the Premier League had laid against us. And my initial reaction was, as you said, 115, there's got to be some mud there. Actually, when you looked at it, and the funny thing was, so obviously as soon as I got home, I looked at these in detail. And this 115 is not quite what it seems. So the Premier League's actual charge sheet, if you like, actually only contains 5 headings. And the 115 comes from the various rules in their handbook over various years. So, for example, one of the charges said, for season 2011-12, Premier League rules B13, C78, C79, C86, and C87. So that's 5 of the 115. And that's for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 50 of the charges. And actually, when the Premier League wasn't specific about the actual events that led to these charges, but I think we know now, we have a good idea of what they relate to. So I say there are 5 headings. And
Carl, before you go into more detail, when did the Premier... We know when UEFA introduced FFP. I was totally flummoxed with this. I wasn't even aware for a long time that the Premier League had an FFP. When was that actually established, and what brought that about? Again, was it just put in by the FA without the clubs agreeing, or did the clubs agree to it?
Well, the Premier League rules, I'm just checking the Premier League charges start about their own financial fair play rules start from 2015-16. But the Premier League has always had rules. Yeah. And those rules include provision of accounts, financial information.
I think they're a bit looser than, or a bit more lenient, let's say, than UEFA's.
Well, yeah, the Premier League financial rules are a lot looser than UEFA's, which is why, of course, if you remember, the Hateful Eight wrote to the Premier League asking them to impose a similar regime to UEFA. Yeah. But the Premier League's always had rules. It always has a handbook. It publishes a handbook every year. And in those handbooks is about, for example, the provision of financial information. So this is most of the rules on which we've been nobbled for the provision. And I've been looking at these, and it's about acting in utmost good faith to the league. So that's one of the rules. The other rules is about providing accounts every year that meet accounting standards. Now, I was looking at these before. It's a bit hard to get hold of the old ones, but I can't imagine we didn't provide accounts. But the funny thing was, when the Premier League, I say, when they first released the rules, everyone started to say, well, what were the rules we've broken? And there's a suspicion that the Premier League must have rushed this out, because obviously in every year they publish a new handbook, and some of the rules get changed and some of the rules get moved, and so they have to charge us with the rules that were applicable in every year. But when people started checking them, there was one about we hadn't cut the grass short enough, another one about not entering the FA Cup, and another one about something else, which tends to suggest, well, it could suggest it was a bit rushed. So the Premier League, of course, started investigating the same time UEFA did, 2018, and it's taken them like over 4 years to come up with these charges. And my view was, if they haven't found anything by now, then they're not going to. And there is a rumor, a bit of a whisper, that this is why Daniel Levy, the Spurs chairman, got name checked. There's a whisper that he rang up the Premier League and told them to do something. So the Premier League rushed these charges. How true that is, I don't know. But some of them seemed a little bit strange. So the Premier League made a bit of a fool of itself to start with, and had to revise some of these. So the 5 headings are from the seasons 2009-10 to 2017-18 inclusive, and the 2017-18 is significant because that's when the UEFA charges, of course, came in, and from the Spiegel stuff. So that's all they can investigate. It says the rules require provision by a member club to the Premier League in the utmost good faith of accurate financial information. Actually, it doesn't say anything about accurate in the Premier League rules, but it says appropriate standards. So what they're saying is our auditors have signed off, our directors and auditors have signed off inaccurate accounts.
It's a big accusation, that big charge.
It's a big challenge. So it says accurate financial information that gives a true and fair view of the club's financial position. This is where it gets interesting, in particular with respect to its revenue, including sponsorship revenue, its related parties, and its operating costs. And then there's 50 combinations of actual rules and years that were deemed to have breached. But these are not 115 separate charges. So it's like, I find it difficult to believe that would be found guilty of Rule E13 but cleared on Rule E14, or will be okay in 2011-12 but guilty in 2012-13. So I think it's all or nothing in these, but they don't really say very much. But I think related parties obviously relate to the Abu Dhabi sponsorships, and I think we'll be talking about Piers Morgan shortly. But I think some of the sponsorships that perhaps were not examined by UEFA, but they have been seen by UEFA, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand. So it's about those. But the general impression is we've not provided accurate accounts, and that is a big charge. That is a real big charge, because potentially that's a criminal offence. I've said before. Company I used to work for, three of the directors went to prison for 14 years for falsifying accounts, basically. So yeah, that's a big charge, and I can't imagine for one moment we knowingly deceived our auditors, or if our auditors knew and had signed off the accounts, that will hold good. But it's about something specific. It's probably about the Etisalat sponsorship, maybe one or two others. So that's one heading. The second is, and this is the one where there's probably the most information. So from 2009-10 to 2012-13, it's about contracts, relevant contracts with its manager. Now, the manager then was Mancini. So we know from Der Spiegel that he had a side contract with a club in Abu Dhabi owned by Sheikh Mansour called Al Jazeera. I say not to be confused with the TV channel. And this contract was paying him 1.75 million a year to provide some consultancy to the managers, coaches at Al Jazeera. So there was some issue that apparently City paid him this money. I'm not quite sure. So I think the kind of implication is we hid some of his remuneration using this contract. Now, it's a bit nonsensical because the Premier League will have to prove he didn't provide that consultancy. And secondly, at the time, as I said, we were making huge losses. I think 195 million, 95 million. Why would you want to hide 1.75 million? Makes no difference to our accounts whatsoever. If we're hiding 20, 30 million, you could say, okay. But, 1.75 million. And there was a lot of correspondence that released as part of the Der Spiegel stuff. And it's quite interesting because Mancini was financially quite greedy, I think. And he tried to renegotiate his contract. And Gary Cook, you could see the emails. Gary Cook was a bit exasperated with him and said, we expect your earnings in whatever year it was, 2011, 12, 2012, 13, to be in the region of 10 to 12 million. So again, why we're hiding 1.75 million? The contract ended in 2012, I gather.
Yeah. If you remember, I'm just going to mention that that journalist, was it Rob Harris from?
Yeah. Who was with Associated Press at the time. He's now with Sky.
Yeah, Associated Press. And he came out. Was it the first question after we won the
treble? Yeah,
by beating Watford 6-0? So we're the first team to win all domestic trophies, and that was the question. And quite rightly, Pep wasn't happy. He's a bit indignant that this was the question. We've just done this amazing feat.
I don't walked out at that point, but yeah. Well, let's just say that Rob Harris was doing a lot of appearances on Qatari TV at the time, on the channel Al Jazeera and on beIN Sports. You can read whatever you want into that, but and at the time, Qatar and the UAE Saudi Arabia axis weren't very friendly, so you can read what you want into that. But it looks like a nonsense to me because why are we paying him 1.75? And it's his problem to account for the tax on that. So I don't think that's going anywhere as a charge, to be honest. And the other ones, this is A and B. B is about full details of player remuneration in its relevant contracts with players. And that goes from 2010-11 to 2015-16. Now, again, we think we know what this relates to because, again, this was covered by Der Spiegel. Now it's an interesting one because players just don't get paid the salary because they get a salary like I do. I'm a full employee, paid Schedule E. I pay tax on my salary, and players do the same, despite the fact they earn a lot more than me. They get a wage slip with tax and national insurance deducted, but part of their salary can be paid in what known as image rights. Now, image rights is a kind of a payment for the permission to use their images in club promotional material. So, when we do the City TV videos and the Inside City every week, it's that. Now, it's different to the normal salary because it's paid to them as a personal service. So it's paid to them via a limited company, basically, gross, and they have to account for the tax and national insurance on it. Very simple explanation. Now HMRC has been conducting a big investigation into image rights payments because obviously they're not if you're not paying it through PAYE, they're not getting their cut. So there's been a long-standing, in fact, the original case to enable players to get paid via image rights was brought by Dennis Bergkamp and David Platt when they were at Arsenal. That was about 2000, I think. So it's been going on a while. So Arsenal obviously started that, presumably started that. So HMRC have a general rule of thumb that players can't take more than 10% of their total income in image rights. Now, that can vary because obviously players got a high profile. You think of someone like Messi, Ronaldo, Haaland, that can vary. So, but generally, HMRC is talking to clubs like United about this. So there's an ongoing dispute between HMRC and United, but because we're the ones getting the We're the ones getting the flack. So what happened in 2000 and I can't remember 2012 or 2011? We set up a separate company called Manchester City Football Club's Image Rights Limited. That handled the payments of image rights to players. And then after a year, we changed the name of that company. And there were a couple of City senior figures. So I think Simon Cliff, the general counsel, and John McBeath, I think, one of the directors, main board directors. They were directors of that company. After 12 months, we changed the name of that company to Fordham Sports Image Rights. And Simon and John left the board, and it was taken over by our father and son, Jonathan and David Rowland, who appear to have connections in Abu Dhabi. Now, we sold the image rights to them. Now, this all goes back to 2012-13. If you remember, we talked about we were desperately trying to comply, thinking we could take advantage of this transitional arrangement whereby if we could show that wages paid to players over that met certain conditions could be excluded from losses. But we had to achieve a certain level of turnover. And one of the ways I think we did that was to sell these image rights, the intellectual property, to Fordham. And Fordham paid us some money, and that helped us achieve the revenue level that we needed, or we thought we needed. We became irrelevant in the end. Whether we'd have done this if we'd known how things would have turned out, I don't know. But anyway, Fordham took over the payment of image rights to players. And the allegation was that they were reimbursed by Sheikh Mansour, by Abu Dhabi United Group. Difficult to see what Fordham got out of it, to be honest, but I'm sure they got something out of it. But there's nothing wrong with that because it's a personal payment to the players. Now, what I think has happened, and we don't know because it hadn't been specific, is for a little while we didn't declare that as part of our financial fair play submission. This is just my guess. And it would appear, I read an article that Reuters had written, actually UEFA queried this in 2015. So you put two and two together, you think when UEFA actually came in 2014 and they were going through our books as part of the charges, they noticed this. Now, we didn't try to hide it, because if you go onto Companies House and you put in Manchester City Football Club, you'll see Fordham is associated with City. So it's not like we set up this company which had no apparent relationship with City. It's there as part of City's Companies House entry. So, but I think what's happened is we didn't declare it. Maybe we didn't declare it in the submission we make to UEFA for financial fair play. And this seems to be borne out by the charge. Now, UEFA spoke to us about it in 2015, apparently, according to Reuters. UEFA brought up this arrangement, and it ended formally in 2018. So Fordham's now in liquidation. So presumably all image payments are coming through City now. Now, I don't know what happened between 2015 and 2018. But my assumption is, my guess is, we then started including it in our UEFA submission. So there's probably 3 years, 2013, 14, 15, maybe, where we didn't include that in our FFP return to UEFA. Now, but UEFA knew about that. UEFA had talked to us in 2015 about that. And if there'd been a problem, they could have charged us with that in 2018, 2019, and they didn't. And you think, if we weren't including it, so whether it was a grey area, or whether the UEFA were happy with the explanation and we agreed as part of the settlement that we changed things, UEFA appear to have been okay about the arrangement, and as I say, it stopped completely in 2018. So again, it's a strange one. UEFA, it wasn't time barred. UEFA could have charged us, but they chose not to. And we don't know why, but it seems, if we've broken any rules, it seems a much more solid charge than the Etihad one. So I can only assume, my guess is, whatever we agreed with UEFA in 2015, it wasn't something that came out the blue. in 2018. It's something UEFA had known about for a few years. So whatever came out of those discussions, UEFA were happy. So the implication is that if UEFA weren't bothered, why should anyone else be? So that's the bulk of the charges. We'll come. I think we're going to talk about Etisalat in a minute when we talk about Piers Morgan. But the third charge is that we had to comply with UEFA's FFP fair play regulations. Now, we talked about submitting accounts to UEFA. Actually, we don't. We submit to the Premier League. They're the licensor. So the implication seems to be that in providing allegedly false accounts, we provided false accounts to UEFA implicitly for FFP, and it might impact our. So I should say we don't know exactly how much these player image rights were worth, but I reckon it's about 15 million a season, give or take a couple of million here or there. It's we're not talking about 50, 60 million a season. We're talking about 15 million, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. But it's really difficult to say. So again, potentially, could we have failed FFP if we'd included those? But again, UEFA were on top of it. So anyway, the third charge is and I'm guessing, by providing what the Premier League allege are incorrect accounts. Therefore, we've deceived FFP, deceived them from an FFP point of view, but also we've deceived them from their own cost, what they call them, the profitability and sustainability rules. I was just looking for the right. And that covers 2015, 2016, 2015-16, 16-17, and 17-18. So again, I think this kind of ties in with the Fordham image rights thing, because that's the gap to 2015 to 2018. I don't. We don't quite know what's happened. And then there's the non-cooperation. So 3 and 4 very much depend on 1 and 2, because if 1 and 2 were found not to have falsified our accounts, then 3 and 4 fall by the wayside. There's no mileage in those two charges, and of course the last one is about non-cooperation, so that remains to be seen. So this 115 charges is not 115 completely separate things. It's under 5 headings, so it's just to go over them: the failure to provide accounts that provide accurate accounts that provide a true and fair view, manager and player remuneration, and then the knock-on effect of failing to comply with FFP and the Premier League's own profit and sustainability rules. So the actual charges themselves are actually quite thin. It's not 115 separate accounting offences. It's that there are 3 main headings.
So basically, it's basically the same charges over different seasons. That's why they're under 5 headings.
Same charge over different seasons over multiple rules.
Yeah.
So
basically,
example, if you look at the big one, failure to provide true and fair accounts, the Premier League has a rule about acting in good faith, and we're deemed to have breached that. They have a rule about providing accounts. Doesn't say anything about accurate in there, actually, but accounts that meet accounting standards. And if our accounts met accounting standards, I can't see how we'll get done for that. And there's about 4 rules that cover that. So if we provided in 2010-11 to 2017-18, 2009-10 to 2017-18, if we're found to have provided accounts that represent a true and fair view, that were accurate, then 50 charges fall straight away, and probably the FFP one and the Premier League profit and sustainability one falls as well.
Yeah, I mean, Colin, if any of these, some of the charges obviously are going to be a lot more serious than others. The potential punishments for some of them will be a lot more serious than others. Obviously, there's a wide range of things. You could get slapped on the wrist for something that's a minor indiscretion. You could get a fine. People are talking about points deductions. People has got, some fans has gone as far as saying demote City or take away our titles. Looking at the charges that we've been discussing, what do you think are the potential outcomes if we are found guilty of any misdemeanors?
I think the most likely outcome, well, if we are found guilty, I don't think. Well, the non-cooperation one is probably the one that's the highest chance of something happening. I really don't think anything is going to happen on the other charges. So, non-cooperation, we're going to get a fine. The size, the amount. I mean, if we were found guilty of knowingly providing false accounts, yes, that's quite serious. And I think we could probably potentially expect a points deduction or something like that. But I just don't think it's going to happen. But I mean, the Premier League, there's no tariff of charges. They can do what they like. Yeah. But like I said, I don't think we're going to be found guilty. I'd be surprised if we were found guilty of any of the substantive charges. And therefore, I think the worst case scenario is a fine potentially for non-cooperation. But again, that's got to be tested by the Premier League panel. We aren't going to be starting next season in the North West Counties League, that's for sure.
There's going to be a lot of mileage on this to go. I think on the last time we spoke, we were talking about, or I remember talking about 3 or 4 years before from start to finish. How much more mileage do you think there is in this before either a decision is made? Can we appeal it, or can Premier League appeal it if either party is not happy with the outcome?
Well, we don't know. So the process is that the Premier League, it's all internal, a bit like UEFA. They suppose they have an independent panel, but how independent can you be when you choose the guy who chooses the panel? So as we know, there's a KC, King's Counsel called Murray Rosen, who's an Arsenal fan. He's the Premier League kind of go-to guy on this. So he has to pick a 3-man panel, which I think can include himself, but probably won't. And they will hear the charges. We don't know yet if that panel has been appointed. And if we don't like the outcome, we can appeal. And then the Premier League appoints another panel, which does seem to make a mockery of it. We can't go to CAS. There's no provision to go to arbitration in the Premier League's rules. And there is very little scope for a legal appeal. So basically, the Premier League holds all the stuff, but you've got to hope.
When this actually broke, obviously, it was a time when the government were talking about independent, looking at this, wasn't it? I mean, what's the movement on that? Has anything moved on that as opposed to the FA doing their own thing?
No, nothing has moved.
Okay.
Well, the government said they're going to do it. I don't think it'll get done in the lifetime of this Parliament.
Yeah, because we thought it was a bit of a smoke screen for that as well, didn't we? Look as though they're doing something.
Yeah, you do think that, and there was some speculation at the time that the pressure to produce our US-owned friends, Liverpool, United, Arsenal, Spurs, they don't want this independent regulator. They made it pretty clear they don't want this independent regulator. And there was some speculation that this was rushed. And we said before, this seemed to have been rushed. Was it because to show that the Premier League is capable of keeping its own house in order?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen in the past, Colin, I'm just moving on a little bit. We've seen in the past, we saw with the UEFA case when they were going through, and a lot of leaks. And, and this is one of the arguments City have about, supplying information, because like we talked about phishing exercises. And if the leaks, who are the leaks coming from? Because there's absolutely no way, in my opinion, that City would be party to this leaks. Why would City leak all this information? That makes it look bad. That makes City look guilty.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we can speculate. UEFA, there were a lot of leaks. And there's supposed to be an ethics inquiry, not like ethics accounting, but ethics ETHICS. And that seems to have died the death. So we don't know, but there was very much a suspicion that there were leaks from the CFCB, the Club Financial Control Board, or people closely associated with them. I mean, let's not cast aspersions, but Rick Parry, former Liverpool chief exec, and David Gill, former United chief exec, were all closely involved with that body. So, but we don't want to cast any aspersions. It seems that the Premier League thing has been tighter. There don't seem to have been any meaningful leaks from that. So, and in fact, there was a High Court case about should the Premier League even publicise what they're doing. I don't know the exact details of the case. It was quite an arcane, complex case, but the judge found that City and the Premier League were actually on the same side on that. They wanted to keep things secret, and the judge says, no, it's in the public interest that this be revealed. So, and again, that was about cooperation, and the court ordered us to cooperate. So that actually may count in our favour when it comes to the independent panel, because we've been to court and been told to cooperate, and presumably we did do afterwards. So yeah. So we don't know. We don't even know if the panel's been selected. I have a suspicion that it may be wishful thinking that the Premier League never wanted this, and a bit like UEFA, because I know for a fact that Alexander Seferin was trying to make this go away as quietly as possible, and I've got to suspect that the Premier League are also not keen to wash their dirty linen in public, and but they've been forced into it, and I think that the fact that I saw someone on Blue Moon Forum saying that the fact that this investigation is carried on has proved the Premier League isn't under pressure, but I think it proves the opposite, because I think it proves they are under pressure, and I think these charges are quite weak, they're quite thin, and the impression, as we said, that they were rushed out.
Yeah.
At the time of the independent regulator was on the table.
Yeah, and obviously in the last few days we've had that bastion of investigative journalism, that pillar,
bastion of virtue. Then I was
bastion might be a play on words there, of investigative journalism. Piers Morgan, the one and only, who's come out with this hard-hitting show he did a few days ago. We had David Dean on there, who was kind of squirming in his seat, looking uncomfortable. Who's
David Dean, Ray? What does he do? What's he?
He used to be the guy at Arsenal? Was he the chairman?
Vice chairman, yeah.
Yeah. So he was really big man at Arsenal. He was there with Arsene Wenger. People at Arsenal still want him back, because when he was there, generally they ran a good ship and they were winning stuff. You remember Arsenal won the we did. They never let us forget it. In 2004, they were the Invincibles. They won the Premier League title, I think, if I'm right, 3 times in about 6 years or 7 years. So, they did all right under David Dean. And so he was there, and he did squirm a little bit in his seat, because there were some particularly loaded questions, trying to push him down a one-way street where there was, giving him one option of an answer. And David Dean, actually, he showed his dancing feet. He could be on whatever, Dancing for the Stars or whatever these programs are. I can't remember. Strictly Come Dancing, because he was quite nimble, and he just turned around and basically turned around and said stuff like, "Sit you innocent until proven guilty." But can you tell us a little bit more about what these bombshells that Piers Morgan revealed to us?
Well, I didn't watch it, but these bombshells are like a firework that doesn't go off. What it seems to have been is about an arrangement we had with Abu Dhabi mobile telecoms company Etisalat, well-regarded brand in that part of the world, and this has been known about for years. So my understanding is when UEFA actually came in 2014, 2015, they were aware of that arrangement, and the arrangement seems to have been, it's a strange one, that Etisalat paid Abu Dhabi United Group, who then paid City. So basically, it looked like ADUG, as we'll call them, were funding the Etisalat arrangement. Now, from what I read, UEFA were aware of that and were given reassurances that this money had come from Etisalat and went away satisfied. And that was back in, again, 2015. So this is why this is old ground. David Kahn wrote about it in about 3 years ago, 2020. at the time of the Kaz case, again, it all came out. Now, the Etisalat, we're going back to 2010, 11, I think, 11, 12. So actually part of it was outside FFP anyway, and the rest was time barred. Now, that was something that was time barred. But UEFA had already seen this arrangement, and UEFA seemed to have been, again, okay with it as they were with the image rights stuff. So this bombshell was really nothing of the sort. Now the Premier League may take a different view, but City in their submission to CAS made it clear that the Etisalat had met their obligations in full. So again, it's a non-revelatory revelation, if you like.
There's nothing in it. So, was there anything in what Piers Morgan said that had in his show that had any value whatsoever?
Well, I say I didn't see it, but from what I gather, no.
Yeah, that's quite damning.
It's nothing new. It's nothing that wasn't known about. And my understanding was it was known about back in 2015 by UEFA. So it's not something we've hidden until this present day. And it's been around for years and years and years. And UEFA knew about it. UEFA were given assurances, from what I gather, that Etisalat had said met their financial obligations and were, again, we're okay with it at the time.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to ask Bernard on these charges, the current ones?
No, I think it's fine. I think we're sort of say thankfully Piers Morgan has obviously had me worried to death when he obviously announced this show he was going to do, and I thought this is it now. This is the end of Manchester City as we know it. But fortunately, we're still here.
This exclusive was bombshell was from a 3-year-old David Kahn article, which was written about 3 years after the event, 3 or 5 years after the event. So
it's a rehash of old stuff that
stuff that was already in the public domain.
That didn't go anywhere anyway.
We do still believe it'll go on for a while, though, don't we? We're not going to get any imminent response, Colin, over the next few months.
No, I mean, there's occasionally rumours on Twitter that the Premier League is dropping the charges, or it's dropped 95% of them, but we don't know. So, as I say, I'm convinced the Premier League would like this to go away quietly.
Anything from the chairman when the chairman did his statement? Was there anything on there? I know he said he couldn't talk about it. Anything you got gleaned from that? Anything that we'd learned from what he said?
No. I mean, I know obviously through my time at City Matters, the club was quite confident that it would be cleared of these. It said so publicly that they feel there's nothing in it, and I know they've said it privately within the club itself. But is that talk? But they said the same thing about the CAS case, didn't they? UEFA charge and the CAS case, and were proved right.
But City are going to be bullish every time, aren't they? They're not going to come out and say, hey, yeah, you've got us bang to rights. Every time City accused of something, they're going to come out and defend themselves, which is only, I suspect, normal and natural.
We can always say, guys, I think that was, if you think back to when the charges were made, I mean, it was a turning point for the team as well, and probably led to us, galvanised us to go on and do this treble. So thank you very much, FA. You've done great.
Not the FA.
Sorry, Premier League. You did a great job. Thank you very much.
Same again next year, then.
So then we lost the game, did we, after that?
Brentford. We lost against Brentford. I can't forget that. People don't let me forget. Brentford did the double honours, but
Brentford, I mean, we'd won the league by then.
Yeah, it was a dead rubber. But guys, I hope that's enlightened you a little bit, on what's been going on. It seems like for a lifetime, for the last 10 or 12 years, things have been bubbling under, and obviously these charges. And I've said it, and I'll repeat it. I said it 5 years ago during our Centurion season, 2017-18. Because teams can't compete with us on the pitch, they talk about anything that's going on off the pitch that they can. You always hear about the Etihad, about how much you were spending, about the charges or FFP or financial doping and all that. And it's simply because teams are unable to compete with us on the pitch. If City were languishing in mid-table, Colin, would anybody be bothered about this?
No.
There you go. I think that sums
Well,
it
I
up.
doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah, no one would be, in my opinion, either. Colin,
but it's quite funny that Spurs, who seem to have been one of the prime movers, are languishing in mid-table. So
Chelsea's
nice karma there, I think.
Yeah, and now we see all these clubs. Just on a final point, spending shed loads of money. Chelsea, they're about 600-700 million quid in about 2 years. Arsenal on 400 million quid in 2 years. These clubs that were never going to spend it, like Liverpool, on 100 million, and we're only in just 2 days into July. United are spending big on players as well. Everybody's doing it. So, except
I did say to Ray last night, Colin, on a program. I think it was last night, when I said, if you were given the Chelsea accounts to do, I mean, here's a lovely job. Would you fancy it, Colin, going through all that for the last 2 or 3 years?
I'd love to go through the Chelsea account. I mean, there were some deals that they did, particularly when Abramovich was the owner, where they were getting ridiculous sums of money for very average. Remember Oscar? Well, they get 50 million for Oscar in a time when players were, good players were going for 30 million. How the hell? And there was another thing, Liverpool's. No one's ever looked at Liverpool's links with Roma. They got Salah and they got Alisson quite cheap because someone connected with FSG owned or was a director at Roma. No one ever asked questions about that.
Yeah, no one ever asked damning questions about the poor health of the Liverpool first team squad, and it's unbelievable.
Is any other club? I think Everton got some charges, didn't they, guys? Yeah. Is any other club been charged by the FA, by the Premier League?
No, and if you remember back, Liverpool were accused of hacking into our scouting database, and it was finally revealed that they paid us £1 million settlement. And one of the rules we've been accused of breaching is clubs acting in utmost good faith towards the Premier League and each other. With Liverpool, and the funny thing was that the Premier League said, it's too far back to charge them.
Too late.
That was 2013. We're being charged in 2009-10, so that wasn't too long back.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful what I say. Not that there's going to be millions of people watching the video, but you always worry that there's some skullduggery going on in the background. We've seen it with certain clubs, pushing for the Super League, pushing for control. Was it a couple of 3 years ago during COVID, the lockdowns or whatever, where United and Liverpool were trying to take control over the Premier League in effect. We saw some of the big clubs, let's say, who set up the Premier League. We've seen in the past where the away teams used to get, was it 25% of the gate receipts?
More or less, yeah.
And that's big now. So, the clubs just want more and more and more. They don't really care what happens to the Rochdales and Boltons and Macclesfields and Burys of this world.
It's interesting, actually, because we've been invited, David Bernstein's agreed to do an interview for King of the Kippax, a Q&A, an interview for King of the Kippax. And he's very hot on football governance and financial disparity. So one of the questions I'll hopefully be putting to him is, what would he do as an independent regulator? How does he see, financial affairs in football? Particularly, it'd be interesting to get his view as obviously a well-known City fan. I'd be interested to get his views on that compared to where City are now. City are one of the haves. What's his view on that? So look out for that.
I think right now it's about time we wrap this up, this chat, and very soon. It's not that long to go. It's about 5 weeks before, just over 5 weeks before we start footy again. So we'll get on to start very soon. Start thinking about next season, the Community Shield, and the start of the league, the Super Cup. I was looking at tickets, looking at when the Club World Cup is happening in that football hotbed. It will be a hotbed, Saudi Arabia. And if you thought Turkey was bad with your transport, the stories that I hear,
Saudis can do it better.
oh yeah, they can. They'll treat you so nicely. Apparently, that's what I've been hearing from people in the know. So you don't step out of line, lads. But anyway, thanks a lot, Colin, football finance expert, and Bernard Deneen, Manchester City. I'm going to say it, super fan. He is a super fan. He's been supporting Manchester City for over.
I'm just a fan, mate. You know,
You're just super, Bernard. I mean,
you're super, and you're a fan. The stuff you've done for Man City, or for the fans, you know, with fanzines and your magazines and everything else. You've been supporting City for nearly 70 years, haven't you, Bernard? So it's
all right, mate. Don't overdo it. You know, I mean, it's my birthday next week. It's not. Don't start. I'm not 70 though.
Well, you know, I'm just giving you an extra few years, mate, just in case. But I've got to say a big thanks to the guys for coming on today, and hopefully you've learned something new and built upon the knowledge that you've hopefully gained from people like Colin on this channel in the past. Thanks a lot, guys.